around the world, it's Learn Ubuntu Live, presented by LearnUbuntu.org, with your host, Tom Judge. Welcome again to the Green Room at LearnUbuntu.org for another presentation on Internet Fundamental Skills. In this presentation, we're going to learn about image maps and how you can take one big image and cordon off sections of that image to use as a hyperlink. This is kind of a fun lab series in this chapter, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, I want to remind you that it's very important to make your image the right size, especially if you're going to try and use our coordinates. If the image size changes, your image map will stop to work because your coordinates will not be marking off the sections you're expecting it to. So let's see what image maps have to offer us as far as things we can do to make our website more interesting. Here in this opening slide, showing you three views of the image that you downloaded in the previous lab exercise, the sports GIF, I believe it was called. And notice that we're showing in these illustrations, here we're showing a circular map, and here we're showing an example of a rectangular map, and here we're showing an example of a polygram type of map. And throughout this chapter and these lab exercises, we're going to learn how to create and set them as a hyperlink on our web page. So, the first question you might ask is, what is an image map? An image map is a graphical image that links the user from one location to another. So it's an image, and we already saw how to make an image into a hyperlink, but now we're going to learn how to make sections of it available to work as a hyperlink. These clickable areas we're talking about are known as hotspots. There are two types of image maps. There's a server side and a client side. No one ever hardly bothers to use the server side anymore. We're concentrating on the client side image map for this chapter. A client side image map is more efficient because you don't have to send all the information back and forth between the server to get it processed. It doesn't require a special server program, and it offers less network traffic. And it can be used offline, and it's faster. Now, the downside is that older browsers might not support the HTML code, but if you're using a browser that old, you must have gone on a time tunnel trip somewhere, because they're hard to find one that old these days. Server-side image maps, we'll just mention them so you know. It's all done on the server. They create more network traffic. You cannot use a server-side image map when viewing a page offline. They're slower. They're compatible with most browsers because the server does all the work, but really they're not necessary in this day and age. Better off to use the client-side image map. So that's what we're going to work with. Now, there's four basic steps to creating an image map. The first is we select the areas of the objects you want to make linkable. And these can be a rectangle, a polygon, a circle, or actually a point, but we don't mess with the point in this lab. Create an image map definition in your HTML document. That's where you have to write the HTML code that we're going to learn how to do in this lab exercise. Very important, step 3, and it doesn't necessarily have to be step 3. Sometimes you do step 3 first. You obtain the coordinates for your circles or your polygon or your rectangle by looking at the image map, and we're going to use the GIMP browser because that will show us XY coordinates of positions within that image. And then we're going to activate the map by using the tag with the necessary attributes. As you're probably noticing, as you go on, the more fancy tags, the involved tags, don't do very much without an attribute, and this is another good example of that. Now, here's the tags used for image maps, and as you can see, what I just said holds true. It's simply an opening and closing map tag and an area tag. And without any information there, you can see that that's not going to be extremely useful. Now, the image map attributes, first we have to specify the shape. the shape of the image map we're going to make. And that can be RECT for rectangle, circle for circle, or poly for polygon. We then also have to have the coordinates which outline points along that shape that we use to create the map itself. And then the use map tag, which is used with the image tag, so it doesn't just click. So this way the whole image doesn't become a link. Portions of the image become a link. And then the name. Very important to give it, and as usual, assume the name is case sensitive to make your life easier. Now, in preparing our image for the image map, as we said, it's important that you first size the complete image, and we suggest you size it to the specifications we give, so all the rest of our code will match and work in your example. If you want to experiment, you can always resize the image later and then make yourself new coordinates that work with that image. But if your image size changes, your image map coordinates will not work. So here's where we define a circle image map. A circle image map is the simplest one to find. We center X and Y coordinates and then the size of the radius, or the length of the radius. Remember, radius is 1/2 of the diameter. So what we're going to do in this lab, you'll see when you get to the details, we actually figure out the diameter and cut it in half. That's one way to do it. In this example, we're showing a rectangular image map, and this requires two sets of coordinates, one for the top left corner of the rectangle and one for the lower right corner of the rectangle. And here, as you can see, the polygram is the most involved one, and that's obvious because what we have here is a coordinate for every point where the line changes direction. Remember, it's assumed that the last coordinate you give is rejoined automatically to the first coordinate to close the shape, okay? So you have to keep that in mind. In lab exercise 1 and 2, we take our image, make sure it's in the right location on our web server. Remember, we moved this to the public HTML/images folder in our little web server we're working with. And we're going to size it to be 400 pixels wide. And I'm not going to tell you why again, we just said that twice already. Here, we see then, once we do that, we now are going to click the select tool, and we're going to use that to start to get coordinates that we're going to use to make the image maps. You can notice here's the tool, and down in your lower left corner here of your GIMP, you will see the coordinates X, Y given as you move that around the screen. Throughout the first few labs, we gather coordinates for the different shapes, and we make up this chart. We give you a blank chart. If you print out the PDF of the lab, you'll have a copy of the blank chart that you can fill in and do yourself. Now, you can use our coordinates, and it'll probably work. We encourage you to use your own. That way we know, and you know, that you know how to do this. So here's a chart showing our coordinates for 2 rectangles for the tennis racket and the football, circles for the basketball and golf ball, and a poly coordinate for the skier. Now, here's our first lab, lab exercise 3. We create our first rectangular hotspot, and this is around the football. So we're using a rectangle for our first image map example. And in lab 3, you'll see when you click or hover over the football in your browser, you should see down in your browser status area, you should see the URL of the link you gave it, and when you click on that football, you should get to the NFL page, which I'm sure will look different than this one. I made this a while ago. That page is always changing with the latest news, as are many of the pages we're using in these links. These are all links to external pages, by the way. You can make a link to an internal page if you want. At this point, I would recommend we all start thinking about our final project for this course and think about the tools that we're learning to use now and how we're going to use those to create our website at the end of the course. Getting back to our image maps, though, here's our exercise 3 lab results. Exercise 4, we're going to add 2 circle coordinate image map links to our example. Again, we're building on these examples as we go, so them incrementally. This is lab exercise 13.2 is what it's actually called, the name. because it's the 13th chapter and the second HTML example for that chapter. There is somewhat of a method to our madness here. So lab exercise 4, we create 2 more image map coordinates. Again, I'm showing you this chart. These are the 2 coordinates we use for the basketball and for the golf ball to make 2 round, and we convert them to the N. We're going to link those to the NBA and golf, I believe. And here we see the lab results. Here we see the hotspots. And again, I encourage you to hold your mouse over the link and then look in the lower portion of your browser to see that status information. And the reason I'm encouraging that is I want you to get used to doing this because it's a very good troubleshooting tool. Sure, if a link is working, hold your mouse over it and see what status it says. Many times I've found silly misspellings that I did that you don't see. It's always hard to correct your own typing. Believe me, I know. Anyway, these are the results for lab exercise 4. So now we have 3 working hyperlinks on our page at this point. Lab exercise 5, we introduced the polygon. As you can see, the polygon is it's almost a rectangle, but it's not. And you could have used more shapes if you want than this to define that image map. You can make it as tight as you want or as loose as you want. I recommend don't make your image maps too tight around the image because then people tend to miss clicking on them. Leave a little room for error as you create these. Here's the code for lab exercise 5, and here we notice we're just typing. It says poly and then a series of XY coordinates, as many as you need. And then the last coordinate, the last set of coordinates you enter is automatically assumed to link back or connect back to close the shape to the first set of coordinates you added. So in this example, the 64, 180, there'll be a straight line from 60 to 180, 64, 180 rather, back to 137, 121 to close our shape. And here's an example. Again, you hold the mouse over the little skier guy. You should see the link down here in your status area. Hold the mouse over here. View the link there. Make sure it looks okay. Then click on it, and you should be taken to a ski.com homepage, which again I'm sure will not look exactly like this one. The page is always being updated. Okay, now for our homework assignment. This is the first chapter where I actually give you a lab assignment to do on your own for your homework. We want you to make a rectangular image map for the tennis racket. And you should be able to do that based on what we've explained how to do in this course so far. And again, here is all of our coordinates. Here's your coordinates for the tennis racket that we found. We suggest you verify your own by checking on your own image. So this way we see it, you know how to do this yourself. And it's kind of a fun chapter. I'm sure you can think of many ways that you can use an image map to make a friendly looking user interface so people can click on what they want and be taken there easily on your website. So we hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and of course you're welcome to come back again and again, view more of the videos. Don't forget that all these videos are archived at http://learnubuntu.org/vidarchives. And there's a link to archives right on our homepage. And there you can search for different videos and view them at your leisure. And we also now have a YouTube channel, so we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll be notified every time we release a new helpful how-to video clip for Ubuntu Linux. Portions of this program were pre-recorded.